Good morning and good evening, everyone all over the world who is part of this international research conference. It is an honor to be a presenter for today's event. I am Jamie F. Mendoza, the current assistant principal of the high school department of ICMCER of the Philippines University, Batangas. I'm also a graduate of Master of Arts in Education, major in English from Golden Gate Colleges. And I am from the Philippines. The title of my study is English Proficiency Level of Maritime Strand Students in Batangas City as Basis for Curriculum Enhancement. The background of the study. In the maritime industry, of course, English is the main and only language that should be used in maritime communication. Out of 1.5 million seafarers all over the world, 380,000 of them are Filipinos. Just imagine how many Filipinos are seafarers right now. The Lyceum of the Philippines University is the only school in Batangas that offers the Maritime Strand in senior high school. And of course, I, as a researcher, wanted to really find out whether our maritime students are at par with the standards needed when they go to the maritime industry. And also what prompted me is the studies which really show the decrease and the plummeting scores of Filipinos in English proficiency and also in comprehension and for macro skills. So that's why I was really prompted to do this study. Objectives. The objectives is to find out the English proficiency level of maritime strand students based on their test of English for international communication, or what we call the TOEIC scores. Next is to find out the characteristics of the students in terms of linguistic background, language learning, which includes the 4 macro skills, which is listening, speaking, reading, and writing, willingness to communicate, and exposure to media. Another one is to find out the significant relationship between the characteristic of the students and their TOEIC scores. To find out the challenges met by the English teachers of maritime strand students in teaching them the English language. And of course, to propose curriculum enhancements to further develop the proficiency level of the respondents. The framework. This framework is also based in the interaction theory of language acquisition and ESL. So this is about the input, process, and output. Of course, we will input the characteristics of the respondents, their English proficiency level, challenges met by the teachers. Once those data are gathered, we will move to the process of the questionnaire, documentary analysis, and the interview. And then the output of the study is curriculum enhancement. Design and methodology. The research setting, the study was conducted in LPU Batangas for students who are enrolled in academic year 2019-2020. The instrument was a self-made questionnaire and was only disseminated via Microsoft Forms because it was safer to do that during the onset of the pandemic in 2020. Respondents are 167 grade 11 maritime strand students. The data that were gathered were treated using weighted mean ranking, standard deviation, Pearson's R correlation coefficient. Results and discussion. Results and discussion, the performance of the students based on the results of the TOEIC. 105 out of 167 respondents, or 62.87% of the total respondents, fell under the intermediate level with TOEIC overall rating of 405 to 600. Next is language learning. The characteristic of the students based on their language learning show that the 4 macro skills included in the study, listening had the highest composite mean. They're more comfortable and they feel that listening is their strength. This show that majority of the students can really comprehend the English language. However, in writing, it was the contrary. Writing only gathered a 2.49 composite mean, which fell under seldom. So they're not really that confident in writing compared to listening. 2.3, willingness to communicate. The study showed that the respondents have the highest willingness to communicate with their friends, rather with teachers or with people in authority. And to present to a small group or a large group earned the lowest mean of 1.99, which is highly unlikely. So a lot of them are not comfortable speaking with groups or speaking publicly. Exposure to media. So it's seen in the study that our students are really more exposed to English when they watch television shows or different series, and it gained a mean of 3.73, which has a verbal interpretation of always. And on the other hand, reading English newspapers or magazines ranked the lowest with 1.96 mean, or a verbal interpretation of seldom. So we would see the effect of technology here. A lot of them are exposed to watching, which is very handy for them, right? You turn on the TV and you watch using your mobile phone, and you can really be exposed to the English language compared to newspapers and magazines. Number 3 is the relationship between the characteristics of the students and the results of the TOEIC exam. So it was clearly seen in the statistical report that there is a significant relationship between the TOEIC scores and the characteristic of the students. Challenges met by the teachers in teaching English to the Maritime Strand students. So you would notice that willingness to communicate was a struggle for the teachers. They felt that the students were not open enough. The students were not speaking in English during their classes. And of course, they have this fear of committing mistakes. So most students would not like to speak publicly because they would not want people to see the mistakes that they would commit. And also, it is noted that some of the students are having a hard time to speak because they need to improve their comprehension and their vocabulary. Conclusions. The goal set by LPU Batangas High School Department is to make sure that students reach a score within the 605 to 780 range, or the basic working proficiency level. Just to give you an overview, the basic proficiency level is here, and the intermediate level is right below the basic working proficiency level. So it means that we are not far from the goal, right? However, we have to make sure that the students would have an opportunity to really improve their scores and be able to reach the goal. Another conclusion that we got from the study is writing and public speaking must be taken into consideration when creating the enhancements in the curriculum. Recommendations. Of course, since the study only focused on the English proficiency level of Maritime Strand students, I also recommend that this study, or the English proficiency level of other strands, be measured and be researched as well. One of the biggest recommendations in this study is creating an English proficiency program. So this is an umbrella of everything that we would implement to improve the English proficiency of the students. So we start with an English proficiency campaign. And also under this is an English proficiency class. You would notice that in the senior high school, they don't study the basics like the spelling, the grammar, and syntax of sentences. They have different subjects. However, we notice that it's very much needed for us to have an English proficiency class. This is where basic things about, or basic knowledge about the English language are being taught. So this is a once-a-week class that would be implemented for academic year 2021 to 2022. And you might be wondering, how about those students who have a higher TOEIC score? Of course, nobody would be left behind, because for those who are proficient already in their TOEIC scores, we would offer a different program for them, which we call the Toastmasters. The Toastmasters is an international program which our school plans to partner in the future, so that those people or those students who already gained a high score in TOEIC would further improve their communication skills. Next, again, this is part of the umbrella of the English proficiency campaign. We also have an English speaking campaign, or what we call TIE. When we talk about TIE, this is Teach in English, Think in English, and Talk in English. It is very important that teachers would really be models in speaking in English. How can you expect your students to be able to speak in English if the teacher cannot communicate in English as well, right? So we are really looking into capitalizing into the teachers teaching in English. Next is the Think in English and Talk in English. We noticed that a lot of students stuttered, or a lot of them would have the fillers like, and it would be difficult for them to really speak and express themselves in English. That's why I am a firm believer that correct practice makes perfect. So they have to always think and talk in English. Why do you need to think in English? Because when you think in your vernacular, or in our case, in the Filipino language, it would be difficult to find a word that would have a direct translation in the English language. However, if our students practice thinking and talking in English, it would be really easy for them, not really easy, but it would be easier for them to communicate using the English language. So that is our TIE campaign. Again, the Teach, Think, and Talk in English campaign. Next is we plan to contextualize the core subjects under the maritime strands, like EAPP, oral communication, reading and writing. Most of the time, these maritime students are not interested in learning English because they have not really looked into the importance of the English language in their future careers. So what we did is we tried to enhance the curriculum and insert nautical terms or naval expressions or terms that they would use in their future careers. This is still under, we wrote a letter about this, and we hope that this would be approved by the Department of Education so that we can implement it for the next academic year. Utilization. The study was already used in TOEIC intervention program for the Maritime Strand students. So we had this TOEIC intervention program where those students who got a score below the intermediate level, we have exercises for them. We have this intervention for them in their learning management system. That's why we have to adapt with the pandemic. So this intervention happens online. And we also use this implementation of our independent reading program under a third-party provider. So we noticed that, of course, we have to work on the vocabulary, we have to work on their comprehension and their writing. So we capitalize as well in our independent reading program, which again can be done online because of the pandemic. So ladies and gentlemen, that is the end of my presentation. Here are my references. Let me end this with a quote from Zora Hurston. Research is formalized curiosity. It is poking and prying with a purpose. Again, research is formalized curiosity. It is poking and prying with a purpose. Let us all continue to be curious. Let us cultivate the love for research so that we would be able to impart more knowledge to the future generation. Again, thank you so much to everyone behind this research conference, especially the Dean of Graduate School of Golden Gate Colleges, Dr. Esperanza Lusanta, and ICMCER President, Mr. Romel Tabula. Thank you so much for this opportunity. To my fellow presenters, thank you for imparting knowledge to each and everyone. Thank you so much for listening.